Hi, Rick Knowlton here, co-author of A World of Chess, its development and variations through centuries and civilizations. You got to have this book. We're going to talk now about Gothic chess. Now, ever since the idea of putting a queen together out of a rook move and a bishop move was created and popularized around the end of the 15th century, many people have thought, hey, what if you take a knight move and add that to a rook move or a bishop move, even a queen move in some cases. And so we've got a whole chapter in our book about those ideas, and probably the one that's most likely to catch on, take hold with modern chess players, is the variant by Ed Trice, Gothic Chess. This video is about just why that is such a particularly well thought out and tried variation, and we're making a new push to get people familiar with it and get people to try it again. So, this is my interview with Ed Trice, the creator of Gothic Chess. Okay. So, Ed Trice, the creator of Gothic Chess, and there's really a lot to this game that you wouldn't know just by looking at the board and hearing a brief description of it. A lot has gone into this game, and I'd really like Ed to fill us in on it. So, before you created Gothic Chess, I understand you were planning to really market Capablanca chess.
Capablanca chess, that's right.
Were you actually making the boards and the pieces then, or how did that work?
Well, I didn't have the set like we have here today yet, but what I did was I physically took a knight and a rook in a frying pan and I melted them, the bottoms in the frying pan, and then stuck them together quick before they congealed. And for the archbishop piece, I took a bishop and I glued 2 checkers to the bottom of it to make it a taller bishop.
Yeah.
And I printed out a 10 by 8 board like it Kinko's somewhere, and I had it laminated. And the first problem you encounter with Capablanca's chess is the I-pawns are undefended on each side. There's no piece that can hold it. And there's a way to catastrophically exploit that. And
yeah, you would think that you could just start out by defending it and then get on with the game.
But what happens is you can always undermine a piece that is now defending it. You can chase the defender away. You can compound attacks along diagonals and undermine the defender. You can create X-ray attacks in back of the defender. And the quintessential game that finally decided it for me was myself versus a fellow named Joel Guillen, where we actually played this.
Okay, so you're attacking with the archbishop, I'm defending with the knight.
The archbishop comes out and immediately hits on I7.
It seems pretty solid. It's got 2 points defending it.
Absolutely nothing wrong with this, but nowadays this is not a recommended move. Chancellor in the I file, but
it shows the weakness.
This was very early on in our understanding of the game, but now I'm still hitting on the I pawn.
Right.
Joel did not want to push the pawn forward because he was afraid of the stacking of the queen and archbishop on the same diagonal where he just undermined his knight. So he defended with the archbishop, or the chancellor here. So the chancellor on g6 is holding I7, and I'm going to stack the pieces up anyway.
Yeah, well, it still seems well defended. But
it looks like it on the surface, and he makes this is a normal chess player move.
Right, so now you're ready.
Twice. He wants to get this bishop out, he wants to castle, and I just kind of sat here for a minute and I said, you know what, I don't think, Joel was not a tournament chess player. Okay. He was just a chess aficionado, so I said, let's see if I can get away with this. So the chancellor takes the I7 pawn.
Yeah. So you're giving up your chancellor already, which is a very valuable piece.
Very valuable piece. And this is the whole trick shot.
Giving up your queen, which is a very valuable piece.
And almost everyone falls for this the first time. And archbishop
here
takes
comes the third very valuable piece, and that's
checkmate.
Checkmate.
And eventually, even though you don't start the game this way, you could create weaknesses by compounding attacks. So, I created a checklist, almost like an algorithm. Step 1, try and do this. If you can win the I-pawn, do it. If you can't win the I-pawn, threaten the I-pawn. If you can't threaten the I-pawn, threaten the most valuable defender of the I-pawn. If you can't threaten the most valuable defender of the I-pawn, threaten any defender of the I-pawn. Right? If you just keep going down this checklist, you will always win in Capablanca.
Wow.
And I was looking in the back of Chess Life for different tournaments that were going on around the country, and wherever Bill Goichberg was, there was a gravitas of more money for these tournaments. So they were the ones that were the most popular tournaments. So I would go around, I would take a train to wherever they were on the weekend with my Capablanca set still at the time, made with the frying pan.
Right. And you were using the arrangement that was by Capablanca.
The idea was, as I was going around the country and playing people, the interest was really mostly about being able to move the new pieces. Getting the bishop-knight combination and the rook-knight combination out into play was really what they were interested in. And what I started to realize was my games were getting easier and easier as white. I'm getting these fantastic attacks. Black is eventually on this slow-sinking ship. And I had a harder and harder time drawing as black.
Now, you must have been playing hundreds of games with people all over the country.
I was traveling every weekend for 6 months at a shot.
Wow.
So, the total number of games was definitely in the hundreds. I probably played, without exaggeration, 300 games of Capablanca chess or more against a wide range of players over a wide demographic all over the country. And at some point in time, my partners were getting a little antsy. They're like, look, you know.
Now you had partners who were going to promote this game with you, investing in.
There were a total of 7 of us who were consultants that worked for the law firm of Morgan, Lewis & Bacchus in Philadelphia. And they were at the time the 4th largest law firm in the country. They were interested in my experimentation because I would play this game up in the lunchroom with a couple of people, and it seemed as the weeks would go on, more and more people would be hovering around. You know, a lot of the chess wannabes or the chess amateurs had an interest in it. And finally, some of the people who worked in my information technology department said, you know, if you think it's good, maybe we should try and market this. And we wanted to start and do the next step. And I went around the country again and was playing more people just to get more experience, because I was suffering from the lack of belief. I was getting, the games are just too easy for white and too difficult for black. And I just wanted to make sure, you know, that the thrill of using these new pieces just was ephemeral, you know. And as I was making the second lap of the country going around, people would be like, oh, that's the Capablanca chess guy, you know, stay away from him, you know, they weren't, I'm exaggerating a little bit, but they were less receptive to me the second time around. And I finally got to the point where I basically had to bribe them to play a game. It was like the same old story. Everyone was pushing the D pawn first. Everyone was interposing the knight. Eventually, you get this attack where black has to consider moving a pawn that's going to weaken something in the vicinity of the I pawn.
Were you ever able to confirm this with a computer analysis of just the opening position? I mean, could you just put this in the computer and say, does white have an advantage or not?
I did that in, I think, 2003. Thomas Linke had just published this paper about a technique in computer science called dropout expansion. And the dropout portion means if you analyze the position doing your typical search and it doesn't meet a certain criteria, don't continue sending that explosive portion of the game tree into the search. And the expansion part was the part where the scores were fairly nominal. You continue down that path and go deeper and deeper into the tree. And eventually, you reach some far out node that you couldn't reach when you were just searching, doing a normal alpha beta type search. If you gave the computer enough processing time, it could do the functional equivalent of searching 24 moves ahead. But you'd have to give it a month of computing time. When I gave it the Capablanca position, it finally backtracked all the moves and said, hey, pawn to d3 for white is worth 500 points.
500 points, that's
a rook. It's worth a rook.
Yeah.
It means...
That's way too much.
to stop the mate, black at some point in time was have to go down the equivalent of a rook. The computer analysis, which is completely objective and not subjective, proved that you could always win with white in Capablanca's chess by playing the pawn move to d3. And the reason you play it to d3 and not d4 is because there's some salvation line where the archbishop comes to a6, the pawn would be on d4, the e pawn would be moved, and this archbishop would be checking the king. But with the pawn here on d3, it would block the flank check, and there's no way for black to recover from that position.
Wow.
There's just no way. Even though it looks completely innocuous in the opening, white has an advantage that even an average chess player like myself can eventually see stage by stage. You're getting this attack that black is not eventually going to be able to counter. So,
are you really an average player?
Well, I only played 40 games in the United States Chess Federation.
Oh, really?
So that's not a fair measure of my playing strength. But in the 400 games that we rated in Gothic, my final rating was 2411.
That's pretty well above average.
but then again, I had access to all the information that nobody else has. I mean, I keep track of my games. I keep notes on my games. When I lose games to my opponents, I give them a call. We go over the games in great detail, and that adds to my learning. So
that's how the pros do it.
I'm like the hub of knowledge about this particular game. So after the second loop around the country, I was becoming less and less convinced that Capablanca was the way to go. However, the partners, the law firm who were working with me, were also getting more and more anxious. But all they kept seeing was how people were wanting to play the game with me in different parts of the country, and they weren't really listening to me that, hey, did you see how I whitewashed that guy? That guy, would normally kill me in chess. And did you see how that other guy who was playing against me, I got a draw? Well, there was no way he would be able to draw me in chess. So, but they didn't want to hear that. They're like, okay, we're ready to go.
Yeah, of course. They put their money in.
They put their money in. 7 of us put $12,000 in.
So a total of like, what, 80,000?
A little bit more than $80,000 to make the cavity injection molds. And I kind of did that almost out of, I wouldn't say like a pressure response, but we were going to make a set of these pieces no matter what. I'm like, I'm still not 100% convinced, but I also didn't tell them that. And because I couldn't bring myself to the realization that, you know what? The playing field is tilted in Capablanca's chess to favor white. And it was tilted enough that I thought we should not market this game.
Wow.
But I also didn't have a solution for them yet. I didn't know what the configuration, or if there was a configuration with an 80 square board that could be marketed. And I had to go through this soul-searching process, and I was trying so many different configurations, and it just by happenstance, I was reading Sir Arthur Conan Doyle and Sherlock Holmes when I came across that one famous quote of his that once you eliminate all the impossible, whatever remains, no matter how absurd or improbable, must be the truth. And I took that to mean, and the way I adopted it to this configuration was, I said, I don't care what is going to happen with this configuration. If I could set up the pieces in such a way that the game is most chess-like, that it has no pawns undefended, that it creates symmetry across the board, that has almost all the features similar to chess, like castling short on the right-hand side of the board is white and long on the left-hand side of the board. If it was as chess-like as possible, it's still playable, it still had a decent configuration of the new pieces, that must be the magic solution. I think what Capablanca did is he must have experienced what I experienced during the first lap around the country. There was interest, and I think the interest was biased in favor of the new pieces. Capablanca probably played it enough times, got enough people kind of excited about it, but he didn't experience the lap 2 of the country that I did. That second lap, I had more and more reticence. People were like, oh no, he's that Capablanca chess guy, And finally, when I made the second lap around the country and I changed my configuration to the Gothic chess thing, and the tail end of that, I was literally handing people $10 to play a couple games with me. And at the end of the third game, every now and then, someone would say, let's set them up again.
What, you just tried everything?
I tried every reasonable permutation of the pieces, but I started filtering them, to avoid the explosion of combinations. I wanted to make sure all the pawns were defended in the configuration. I wanted the king to be able to castle under those parameters I discussed earlier. Short side had to be on the right, long side had to be to the left. And I wanted diagonal symmetry for the pieces that could cut diagonally across the board, which we have. The queen is now symmetric with the archbishop diagonal piece. And the only blemish, if you can call it that, is the queen is no longer next to the king. Mm-hmm. The chancellor is next to the king. The archbishop is on the other side of the king. And that was kind of like the light bulb moment. That the queen and the king can't be placed next to each other to defend all the pawns. For example, if you switch the position of the queen and chancellor, the c pawn becomes undefended, and then boom, chancellor in the c file, and black has to react by defending against the c7 pawn. So when you establish it this way, I mean, you can even do like quick castling moves, you know, that look like a standard King's Indian attack. You can get away with stuff like that. And as we showed in an earlier game we did today, the bishops are supported by the knights.
You experimented with,
there's
analyzed,
yeah,
actually played all different things, and you always find there's an equalizing counterpunch, so that the game gets tense, just like we expect from a game of chess played by two good players.
And on either side of the board, you can either allow or prevent some of those attacks, and you can steer your attack or your defense. You know, black can also attack first. You know, if I push d4, d5, and I make a move over here, black could do this, and on the next move for black, he's got two attacks on my d-pawn. I could maybe want to go after it myself, this d-pawn.
Exactly.
And then you get like a Petrov, where you're both attacking that same pawn simultaneously, although in the Petrov defense, the knights attack on the king side of the board. In Gothic, the Petrov equivalent is usually a queen side attack of the d-pawns by the knights.
So after all this, you know, playing and analyzing, you found that all these variations of attack, defense, counterattack are possible, similar to chess, and you really were convinced that you had a good game. I mean, a game with...
It was a balanced game.
Yeah.
There were roughly the same number of wins with white or black.
Exactly.
The drawing percentage was down to about 3% marketability.
Now, 3% drawing is very impressive when we're frustrated by the amount of times that classic chess can draw. I mean, that's been a big issue among chess fans, if not chess players themselves, is just that we love decisive results and dynamic games.
And the most recent World Championship match between Caruano and Magnus Carlsen, all 12 of the standard regulation games were draws.
Yeah, that was painful for us fans.
With the introduction of the Chancellor piece, a knight can hop over the pawns and you have a rook already in play. Mm-hmm. Or you could do things like I did in the Susan Polgar game.
You actually played this game against Susan Polgar.
Right.
We have a video of that.
You did the video of that. And in the game that we just showed against my opponent from Norway, we had a Chancellor that was being supported by a rook in back of it. The whole idea being the Chancellor ends up being a late middle game piece. The Archbishop becomes a late opening piece, early middle game piece, and the rooks, of course, still remain endgame pieces, but you have the functional capability of a third bishop, a bishop that can change colors, so you can go from supporting the dark bishop to supporting the white bishop, and you can create these cascades of attacks, you know, compound attacks along the diagonal that you couldn't otherwise create. And the beauty of it is, you know, you could sacrifice your entire army for one archbishop terminal move that checkmates the king all by itself. No other chess piece can checkmate a king by itself.
Yeah, we have an illustration of that in our book.
There are strategic and tactical components that blend in such a way you just don't have the equivalent notions in chess, and that's what makes the game a lot more enjoyable. There's so much more to explore and discover. I'm sure we haven't even scratched the tip of the surface here.
Okay, I understand you finally had thousands of people interested in this game, subscribing.
We had tens of thousands of subscribers. At a time when the United States Chess Federation had 80,000 members, we had, I think at our peak, and the reason I remember it is because we had $625,000 in annual subscriptions. That means we had 25,000 people paying $25 per year.
Wow.
That was the sum of everything. At our absolute positive peak, we had already had a game site, GothicChessLive.com up, where you can log in and play against people from all over the world. At one point in time, the sun did not set on a game of Gothic Chess.
How did you get from just having, realizing this was a good game, convincing your partners, you know, this is the way to go, How did you get from that point of knowing you had something to more and more people actually playing the game and subscribing, the whole interest in it?
It started with second lap around the country. Once we got the Gothic Chess configuration, and once enough people accepted my bribes to play me, they started asking me for another game. They started, I used to put the constraint on them: if you want $10, you got to play me 3 games. And we were playing 5-minute games of the clock. Then finally, they would say, "Wait a minute, let's push this clock away. Let's just play a game." And I was like, "Oh, this never happened before with Capablanca." And then people started asking me for my contact info, and they wanted to know if they could get a set at some point in time. And I said, "We're getting close to that." And when we got the sets, I started contacting people, and it started out there was usually one person at the club who would order a set. And from what some of the people I maintained contact with thereafter said, they were reticent initially to go to the club and set this up and want to play while the club was playing, but they eventually would play after the club adjourned. And people would stay around, there'd be curiosity seekers, and invariably one friend of that person would want a board, because it takes 2 people to play. And they could play when the one person who has the set is present, but if they wanted to mess around with the game at home, and I can analyze this game and beat this guy because he just,
It sounds like a very organic interest building once you had planted the seed.
I planted the seed, and when I went, more and more people were from around the different spots were getting back to me. One person would get the set. I'd get another order from someone within a week or two. And then maybe a month later, I had sold 5 sets at that club. And that would be maybe the average all around the country. And from there, other people heard about, hey, that club down the street plays Gothic Chess once a month.
Did you do anything to promote it as a whole, a website, publications?
The website where you can play was up and running during this time. You could create your own login name for free, A lot of people would be, Bobby Fischer, Karpov, Petrosian, they would pick those as handles, and they'd log in and play people. And I would review some of what I considered the more interesting games, and I would publish them in this newsletter that we publish 4 times a year, Gothic Chess Review.
There's actually a physical
newsletter
made out of paper, like real stuff.
Yeah, 28. It had to be an integer number of 4 pages, I think.
Yeah.
I think the average was either 28 or 32 pages, 4 times a year.
Wow.
My buddy Gil had this fellow named Harry Martin, who was a cartoonist, and he would draw these funny little, we would call them today memes. Like he had a 3-way tug of war between the Chancellor, the Archbishop, and the Queen. Like it was a Gordian knot in the center, and they were all pulling, for dominance, because which one of these pieces is most valuable can change during the course of the game. And people were asking us to blow up the cartoons and print them on T-shirts and stuff like that. So people started wearing T-shirts around, and we would get even more people interested in the game that way. It took a while, but
yeah. How long did that take from your last trek around the country?
The last victory lap was in 2000, the end of '99, very end of '99, very beginning of 2000, and by the time even Bobby Fischer was interested, it was 2005, so 60 months, 5 years to get to that point.
Wow.
But that was, you got to remember, there were 7 of us that were dedicated to this. There were 7 of us, we each took a different day of the week, and whoever turn it was would send out all the orders that came in through the web.
So how many were you selling at that peak?
Oh God, let me put it to you this way. Nobody made less than $60 an hour as a consultant in Morgan Lewis, and we voluntarily took the day off to process the order.
Oh, the camera kind of cut us off there. What Ed was explaining was that there were 7 partners. Each one took 1 day out of the week off of their high-paying job at a high-level attorney's office just to ship out Gothic chess sets. So it says a lot about how much people were buying Gothic chess at that time. I hope you see now there's really a lot that's gone into this game. It's got a lot of potential, and we really recommend that you try it. Even you modern chess players who are so fond of the game as it is, this variant really has a lot to offer you. There's a special website for this variant, evenbetterchess.com. Yes, try it out and see if chess can be even better. If you go to that website, you'll find ways to play, sets to buy, ways to connect with other Gothic chess enthusiasts, and to really give you a chance to check out what's going on in the world of Gothic chess. Next, we'll have a video about the peak of Gothic chess and how it got so high that it even got the interest of the famous Bobby Fischer. For now, see you next time.